That'd have been better. Yeah. Morning. I'd like to call the Kankakee County Board meeting for August 13 to order. Today's invocation is from Patricia Polk.
Heavenly Father, we meet to serve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, and to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibilities to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now can I sing? Now I'm ready to sing.
Ready. Sir.
Mr. Washington.
Present.
Mr. Legess. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess.
Present.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Present.
Mr. Snipes.
Present.
Mr. Byrne.
Present.
Mr. Seroy.
Present.
Mr. Lear.
Present.
Mrs. Weber.
Present.
Mrs. Peters.
Present.
Mr. Payton.
Present.
Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Ms. Dunbar.
Present.
Mr. Ritter.
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Present.
Mr. Fairfield.
Present.
Mr. Zenz. Ms. Haas. Mr. Carrico.
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Swanson.
Present.
Ms. Zakulo.
Present.
Mr. Featherling.
Present.
Mr. Donnell.
Present.
Mr. Wheeler.
Present. We have a quorum. Under public commentary, I have a few here, limited to 15 minutes total. Is Lynn Boss from Bourbonnais.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm Lynn Boss from Bourbonnais. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also a member of Kankakee. And I just wanted to give you guys an update. We had an event here this past Sunday, and as was shown on NBC Nightly News, we had a nice little segment. We co-sponsored with the JCUA, Jewish Council of Urban Affairs, and about a dozen other religious and social service organizations to host a vigil at our local detention center. There were over 300 people present from across the state, from Bloomington, Champaign, Chicago, suburbs, and local community people. These are people who've had friends and neighbors and work colleagues housed and deported from Jerome Combs Detention Center. Today we have with us around 200 postcards, I think 193 specifically, with 25 more they accidentally took with them, and they're going to deliver to us for next month. We are going to deliver them to you today. Kim has them. She'll bring them up, and I will read to you what they say. They say, Dear Chairman Andrew Wheeler, I am writing today as a member of the Jewish community of Illinois to express sadness and outrage about the jailing of my neighbors and members of my community at the Jerome Combs Detention Center in Kankakee. We must be clear. In allowing ICE to operate and detain people in Kankakee, the county is complicit in the atrocities happening at our borders and across our country. We know that the funds are being sought for an expansion of this facility. We condemn the facility, its expansion, and the proliferation of ICE in the community. An expansion would only compound the moral and spiritual cost of this facility. In the spirit of, I don't know if I can say this right, Tisha B'Av, a holiday that condemns baseless hatred, we ask that you end ISIS operations in partnership with Jerome Combs once and for all. Regarding the $20 million expansion that we have heard is being sought for the detention center, we would really like to have public dialogue about this. We'd like to know the funding source, and we hope that the board will take a vote on this important issue before any further expansion is done. Thank you.
Next up is these kind of got out of order, sorry, as they were turned in. Sally Nader from, doesn't say the city.
Yeah, I'm Sally Nader from Wilmette, Illinois. Good morning. I'm a member of the Chicago Religious Leadership Network Organizing Committee for Latin America. We call it CRLN, and within CRLN, I represent Congregation Hakafa, which is a Reformed Jewish congregation in Glencoe. In my day job, I'm a psychologist. Sunday's rally outside the Jerome Combs Detention Center was a Jewish-led religious event, and it was a protest against unfair immigration practices. Those two issues tie together, and let me tell you how. I'm now quoting from and paraphrasing comments from a Jewish Council on Urban Affairs posting. Sunday's religious holiday for Jews, Tisha B'Av, is a fast day of brokenness and loss. It's one of the most somber days in the Jewish calendar. It symbolizes the destruction of ancient Jerusalem. It was a tragedy for the Jewish people, and by analogy, it is a tragedy today for those suffering along our southern border and throughout the country, including at Kankakee's Jerome Combs Detention Center. Let me say more about this particular holiday. Tisha B'Av, throughout Jewish history, Jews have sought out homes in which to escape violence and persecution. Again, I'm quoting from the Council on Urban Affairs posting. Not surprisingly, Jews see their story reflected in the experiences of thousands of immigrants today fleeing their home countries in intolerable conditions. In the words of Rabbi Suzanne Griffel, and I'm quoting, "It's imperative that we connect our history and experience to the current immigration crisis and that we stand with immigrant communities in Illinois and across the United States." The Jewish holiday of Tisha B'Av is an invitation to communal mourning for all the losses over the years. And by being communal, perhaps paradoxically, and maybe not paradoxically, draws the community together. Tisha B'Av is a time to reflect on, as one person put it, the destructiveness of baseless hatred, and to see its link to the demonization of immigrants. This phrase, the destructiveness of baseless hatred, comes up again and again and again in sermons on Tisha B'Av. Another person, Jackie Baldwin, said that Tisha B'Av becomes an opportunity to reflect on what it means to walk a mile in the shoes of another. Now, a friend said to me on the way down to Sunday's event, "Why do we do this? What difference does it make?" And then she answered her own question. She said, "It's important just to show up." Now, I've thought about this sentence again and again, and I agree in a way that I can't fully express how important it is just to show up. I arrived a bit late for Sunday's event because I hadn't anticipated having to park so far away. So when I eventually got to the event, I stood and then I sat with my camp chair in the very back. And because I was in the back and because the sound system was a tad weak, I couldn't hear. And by then, organizers had run out of programs because more people had come than anticipated. So I also didn't have a program, but I was there. And I might say something else. Because this was a somber holiday, it was a time of subdued protest. I held a protest sign, others did the same, but people were unusually quiet. Even those of us who couldn't hear the speakers implicitly understood that we were in a special moment. As you well know, others and I are here to encourage you to back away from ICE contracts that demonize the undocumented. We all have a role to play in finding a fairer system and in creating a more just world. I'd encourage you to use your influence to say no to wholesale rounding up and jailing of the undocumented. Lend your voices to creating a fairer system and begin by simply saying no to current unfair practices. Thank you.
I have Bonnie Brewer from Kankakee.
Good morning. I'm here to introduce myself. Most of you don't know me. My name is Bonnie Brewer, and I have recently taken over as president of the Community Arts Council for Kankakee County. Our group exists to serve as a central body to promote and encourage and support the arts in Kankakee County. And we appreciate the support that we've had from the county board in the past, and we hope that we can continue to count on your support. One of the ways that we accomplish our mission is by hosting the annual Fall Art and Craft Stroll. So we would like to invite you to join us in the Harold and Jean Minor Festival Square on September the 8th. That's just a few short weeks away, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Support the local artists and art organizations that will be there. We will probably have over 100 representatives that will be displaying the art that they've created. And we will have performances as well from those artists that create performance instead of visual arts. And there will also be food vendors in place. We love our food vendors who continue to support our events. We are one of the largest attended events in Kankakee County between our Strawberry Jazz Festival in the spring and our Fall Art and Craft Stroll in the fall. So if you have any questions or concerns, I'm here to offer my information, or if I don't know the answer, I will find out. We have a wonderful group of volunteers on the Community Arts Council that work very hard to encourage the arts and culture of our area. So I just wanted to introduce myself and invite you to attend our Fall Art and Craft Stroll.
Thank you. The final one is Eric Shellquist. Doesn't have a city on here.
Morning. I'm sure you've all heard about the recent
Yes, thank you.
about the recent lemonade scandals here in town, and just want to point out, recently the Texas legislature passed a law protecting lemonade stands, sold by residents 18 and younger. Basically, any non-alcoholic beverage can be sold with more, with a lighter touch of regulation, and or pretty much no touch. And I have that, and it could be easily adapted to be a county ordinance. I know this is a state law, but I can leave copies of this with you all after the meeting, and just wanted to bring this to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. No more public commentary. Move on. Under communications, I'll make this quick. I put a sheet in your packet just to kind of fill everybody in on some recent changes in finances that everybody would probably want to know about. Sorry, waiting for the truck. Mr. Legess asked about this when I was out of town, so I thought it was appropriate. As far as the highway payback, the second item, last week, I believe early in the week, we repaid the highway department $1.5 million of the interfund borrow that we had done. Well, geez, what was that? 3.5, 4 years ago, something like that, Steve? Yeah, it was a while ago when things were in free fall. So we still have another 1.9 million to go, but that is the financial plan that the board had adopted in the finance committee, and we're sticking to that. So I thought that was some good news and pass that along. What that did is it made me take a look at the interfund borrowing, and we're over 3 years since we began this change in December 2016. We've reduced our interfund borrowing, the money we borrow from ourselves, stealing from the vacation fund to pay the electric bill, which we all do at home. Well, that's about all we were doing back in the day. We've reduced it by $4.33 million, so that's significant. We're still borrowing from ourselves $2.2 million, but that will be going down next year as we're repaying highway that comes off of that, anything else that we do. So associated with all this, I thought it'd be good to let you know that Steve did the numbers, Steve McCarty, and we paid off our TAWs early, saving about $6,500 in interest. We may not need a loan from a bank this next year, which is staggering thinking about where we were at. So we're borrowing less for a shorter amount of time. We may not need to borrow it at all from a bank. That doesn't mean that I may not ask for that authorization, because it does take about a month and a half to get these things together. If we foresee something coming, that I don't foresee us needing that, but it's better to be prepared. So I thought that was really good news. And then the general fund, I said, why not take a look at the general fund? When we started this in December, again, of 2016, we're almost 4.9 million in the hole. We were spending almost two years' taxes early, if you will. We were just scraping by, and every day was, frankly, for the employees of this county, you didn't know if you'd wake up and wonder if you had a job that day. So we've turned it around substantially. As at the end of this year, we're estimating about a $685,000 surplus. It's staggering what has happened with the general fund as well, and it's not all coming from one source, contrary to what somebody might lead you to believe. It comes with financial management, department heads, this board making smart decisions, not spending what you don't have to. It's amazing, you know, that's how you run a budget, is you don't spend more than you take in. It's interesting when that happens. So I just wanted to give that. Is there any questions? I mean, it's really not in depth. We'll go into it in finance down the road, but I thought, hey, why not some good news up front? So, Mr. Snipes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be interested in what would be the anticipated savings of the aggregate interest that we generally pay out when we do borrow from those, considering next year we may not have to borrow, so there will be additional savings from the interest that we will be that we would be paying out.
What is that, about 28,000 a year, Steve? Or it's roughly about 30,000 a year, roughly, a little bit less. So it all adds up. Yeah, it's half of a job, you know, really. So, good question though. So actually, Mr. Seroy had something for public comment, and I totally forgot about that. Todd, did you have something you want to share?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many of you may or may not know, school starts next week, and I just would like to encourage awareness for the little kids that are going to be excited to get to school, and the school buses that'll be on our roadways, and with kids crossing in not normal hours as we know today. So next week all things will change, and moms will be excited to get their kids in that school, and but just help me make people aware to let's start this school year off in a safe way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. One quick thing I noticed during our roll call, Mr. Washington, could you check your mic real quick, please, so make sure we can hear you?
I'm checking.
Okay, got it. Because we did it before, I couldn't really hear you. So perfect, thank you. So under presentations, we have Stacy Wilkin from the Kankakee County Convention and Visitors Bureau, and she wanted to run through the annual report with you regarding the analytics and activities of the CVB. Yep.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman. And hoping to continue the good news that we've just heard from you. And I'm sure there are many parents just as excited to get on their kids on that bus as the students are this year. So as Andy said, my name is Stacy Wilkin. I am the Executive Director for the Kankakee County Convention and Visitors Bureau. We just wrapped a really exciting couple weeks with Chicago Bears training camp in town. So I flip-flopped from tennis shoes to heels today. So we're getting back on track. I wanted to just kind of walk through a little bit of the things that we have been up to. Our mission, of course, is to market and develop branded Kankakee County destination experiences to enhance community economic growth and quality of life. So what that means in a nutshell is that we're really working hard to make Kankakee County a destination, not just for a hotel stay, but for an experience. So what we'll run through today is a little bit of the things that we're doing. I did want to introduce our new board that was appointed at our July annual meeting. As President, Mayor Chastity Wells Armstrong, Vice President Dana Heights, Secretary Lori Sear, Treasurer Tim Nugent. Of course, we have Dave Barron, who is representing the County of Kankakee, Rob Beischer, the City of Momence, Catherine Warnarowski, the Village of Bradley, Kim Bennett, the Bourbonnais Park District, Scott Billadu, the Hotel Lodging Association, and Jim Johannick as our County Chamber of Commerce member. Our team is made up of 3 full-time employees and 1 part-time. We just wrapped up a summer internship program where we had 6 part-time college students here representing the county at a variety of events throughout the area. So small but mighty, and we're really eager to tell you about what we've been up to. Okay, I'm letting it click here. Did it click on yours? Okay, there we go. Very good. As most of you are probably aware, you might not have ridden a bike yourself, but you've seen them around. We introduced a Bike 609 bike share program last summer. We're excited to say that we have just over close to 1,300 rides this year so far. Over 1,100 total members, which is double from what we had last year. So while you might not ride a bike, it's one of those amenities that's really important to have for visitors, for guests, for employers who are looking to promote the county as a destination for employees as well. We released a marketing kit, which you can see some of our materials early this spring. Those materials went out to all of our sponsors, all of our partners, all of our hotels, top employers, as a way to promote the bike share, not just to visitors online, but to also put it in company break rooms and really get the word out. If you go to a coffee shop, you're likely to see this information sitting there. So encouraging people to get out and explore Kankakee County by bike. We've got 50 bikes at 11 racks. Most recently, we installed a rack at the Kankakee River State Park, so that's available for use as well. One thing I wanted to note is this bike share program is actually drawing regional attention. CMAP actually partnered with the community of Elgin to talk about community bike shares and asked me to be a panelist. So I made the trip to Elgin in a shorter amount of time than the gentleman from the city of Chicago. So the ride to Elgin is a little bit quicker when you go up 355. But the question that came up was, how do you handle a rural bike share? And I jokingly responded, well, contrary to popular belief, we have buildings and streets just like you do in the suburbs. So we're excited to be able to offer this as a rural community just south of Chicago. So thank you for your support, and if you haven't ridden one, get out and ride a bike. Earlier this year, February 1st, launched the new version of our visitor guide. You might have heard me say this. This is kind of the Bible of all things tourism in Kankakee County. So we do our very best to include everything that we know of in this publication. We pursued a photography project last fall to really up our ante in terms of visual assets for this guide. So you'll see a variety of homegrown photography. We use as little as stock photography as we can. So what you see is truly what you get in Kankakee County. We've distributed 20,000 copies, including a whole heck of a lot at last week's Chicago Bears training camp. And the feedback has been really positive. So really hats off to all of you for your efforts in promoting tourism and working with your local attractions to really make it a highlight and a destination. One area of focus in our office is the group tour. So what we wanted to do for group tours, and that could be anybody from a school field trip to a bankers association, to anybody that's coming in on a motor coach or as a group. What we wanted to do with this was take the thinking out of an itinerary. So we proposed 4 different itineraries in a digital guide that's only located on our website. Easy distribution and very inexpensive to get that information put out. We've got 4 itineraries, as I mentioned. Game On, which really promotes the experience for Chicago Bears training camp and getting everyone here with a variety of different things to do while you are here. Wine and Shop, which is to promote our ladies shopping weekends with maybe a wine and art gallery stop. Farm to Table, to promote the rural community that we live in and our nod to agritourism. Farm to Table is really a hot commodity right now, so we wanted to make sure that we include all of those experiences. And then a Made in Kankakee County itinerary. We all know that there are a lot of hidden gems in terms of products that are promoted and produced right here in Kankakee County. We partnered with a handful of makers to offer tours to groups, and they are featured in this itinerary. Really excited about that, and like I said, this is digital only, so if you want to find it, go on our website, visit kankakeecounty.com. So we also understand that not everybody receives information in the same way. So while we have a printed version of our visitor guide, we also wanted to make sure that we were hitting people in a 6-state radius digitally. So we launched 2 digital stories earlier this year. One being, what is Kankakee County? A lot of times we get that question, and we wanted to be able to answer that. So my team created a list of adjectives that we thought were applicable to who we are as a county. Kankakee County is flavorful, featuring our restaurants. Kankakee County is, and there's a variety of different words that are highlighted in this story. The top left photo is the making the move to Kankakee County. in conversations with our top employers, with partners throughout the area, we realized that we're all struggling to get people to relocate to Kankakee County. This story actually features a true testimonial of a name that's not unfamiliar to us, Dr. Michael Boyd, who did relocate his family here, and the reasons why. So that's really a story that there is an attractive lifestyle here in Kankakee County, as well as things to do for your employees, as well as their families. So this was distributed to a 6-state radius, and as well as the bottom right was the Do It Upright campaign. So this story was issued 2 years ago with the celebration of the 150th birthday of Frank Lloyd Wright. An easy way to get the information back out is to simply redistribute the story. So the ways we distribute that are through Facebook and Instagram ads and digital display ads. So while you might not be on social media, you are certainly probably surfing the internet in some capacity. So these ads are served up to you, and you'll probably think it's creepy in some ways, but they follow your interests. So you'll see those things popping up on your web browser. When we're talking numbers, because that's always the key component to, is this worth it? We had close to 1.5 million impressions of these stories. So that means it came in contact with 1.5 million people. They might not have searched and looked into it, but that means they saw us. And so when we're looking to rebrand a community, this is one of the first ways that we can do it, by actually just introducing our name and showcasing what we have to offer here. One other thing that we've done and pursued a video distribution. So through our vendor, we were actually able to distribute and have close to 57,000 views of a project that we worked on last fall promoting the outdoor experiences in Kankakee County. So we're on YouTube. That video was served up and viewed 57,000 times. So that's over 475 hours of people binge watching our YouTube, which is pretty exciting. So in our sales department, Vicki, who is here today, is working hard to drum up business. And all of that business, you won't see an immediate return on investment. So as we all know in sales, a lot of this is relationship building. So sometimes it takes 1 or 2, 3 years, in fact, to actually see the fruits of our labor. We did see $1.1 million in estimated economic impact of events and groups that are booked. So that was in the year 2018 to 2019, our fiscal year. So I guess I want to say hats off to Vicki for doing her job and doing it well, but those are all new dollars to the community. The estimated economic impact of leads received, so things that didn't come to fruition quite yet, but they're floating, are just over $1 million as well. So the work of the CVB is not just heads and butts, but it's actually bringing people here for gymnastics events and different events throughout the community. But they might not spend the night, but they're certainly buying food, drink, and gas on their way back out of town. One thing I wanted to throw in here as well, when we're talking promotion of our community, we opened a brand new retail store January 1st called Keiko the Local Exchange. We are actually modeling this after the state Illinois Office of Tourism program called Illinois Made Makers, really promoting the makers that are here in Kankakee County. So we feature, I think 12 local vendors with really unique products or services, not services, but products that are here. And so that's in our office, and that's something that's really been a unique opportunity for us to not sell product, but introduce experiences. So what we're doing is offering a cup from Brickstone to say, come to this brewery and see how cool that is. So all of those things go into the big picture of what we're doing. One thing I do want to note, no surprise here, but Chicago Bears training camp was in town recently. I will be so eager to release the numbers for attendance when they're here. I will say that in my time at the CVB, I've never seen so many cars or people in one space at Olivet for Bears training camp as I have this year. I would love to say it's all of our marketing, but I also think it's a lot of the Chicago Bears being so successful last year. So together, all of those things will really make a huge difference in the people that have come into the community. So I do want to say an official figure for last season was close to 39,500 visitors. So when you put in an economic calculator, that's close to $1.1 million in economic impact. So I know you might not like the stop sign, but you certainly like that impact that tourism has on local tax revenue. So we'll have those numbers soon of how many people came, and we rolled out a really amazing campaign, and I am eager to share that with you next time I'm here. So all of this work, and I'm so excited to release these. These numbers were released from our State Office of Tourism last week, in fact. Each year, the State Tourism Office releases economic impact numbers for the state. How many visitors were here, the economic impact of travel expenditures. Immediately following that, they also release by county. So in 2018, Kankakee County's contribution to state travel expenditures was close to $151 million, which is almost a 6% increase over the previous year. That's people who are here for any reason, spending money, enjoying the community that we all call home. So that's a huge, huge number. I will say that in 2013, so just on a 5-year comparison, the number was close to 129 million. So we are making strides. Good things are happening, and it's because of everyone in this community working together. In local tax revenue, which really strikes a chord with everybody that lives here, we saw $4 million in direct local tax revenue. So that helps offset personal property taxes and different things that we pay into when people are here contributing to our local tax base. So that was over a 4.4% increase over the previous year. And in tourism, we've got 1,050 jobs in the county. So that number continues to increase, and we're excited that it does and that we can support that. So these numbers are released by the U.S. Travel Association with a formula that we pay the experts to know. So I'm just here to report it, and really excited to be able to stand here before you today and talk about it. I always like to end with this slide, and certainly I'll open it up for questions, but we're very proud and excited to continue being the destination marketing organization for Kankakee County. Your support, and I think, you know, just a few short years ago, there was a hotel tax increase to keep the Chicago Bears here to promote tourism. So credit to you all for that decision and all of the people involved in that. Tourism is alive and well in Kankakee County, and we are here to stay, and we're excited to be able to do our job. So thank you so much. I will open it up for questions if anyone has any.
Anyone? Mr. Snipes?
Just not so much of a concern, but just an inquiry. What safeguards are there in place to ensure the bikes are returned? Is there a microchip in them or anything?
Yeah, there's a local contractor. So we introduced Zagster, who is out of the East Coast, with Turn of the Wheel, a Bradley business. So they actually manage the bikes. There's a microchip, so we can actually track where people have even ridden. There's a GPS feature in there. So if there's one missing, the local law enforcement has been instructed to either alert us or the city.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Comments?
Okay.
Thank you. It's good to see that the, oh, Mr. Byrne? I'm sorry. You're, hold on just a minute. And you're number 11?
Yes, I am.
All right.
But number 1 in your heart.
You win. You win. I got nothing.
I just want to make a quick comment. Stacy, great job. It's just nice to see the figures and see what's going on in the community, that there are visitors coming in and spending money.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. The one thing I'll mention is that marketing and tourism are two different things, and this organization is committed to and improving and documenting the analytics of what they do. So this information is known. They target usually outside of this area for the most part, so you wouldn't see a lot of the things that they do as far as the marketing efforts and the shows they go to attract these events here to this area. We don't know that some of the things that are going on at these hotels. So I appreciate the data, because that's what drives solid decision making.
Thank you.
So thanks.
I will say that by state requirement, we are actually supposed to, and legally supposed to, market outside a 50-mile radius. So to your point, a lot of the work that we do is not seen here, and it shouldn't be. It should be outside of the area. So
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Stacy. All right, moving on. This set up here. No vacancies or certificates of recognition. That's odd. We usually have somebody having an anniversary. The minutes of the last meeting, July 9th, 2019. I need a motion to approve. Mr. Burns, second. Mrs. Akulo. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion carries. Under Claims Committee reports.
Mr. Chairman and members of the County Board, your Committee on County Claims would beg leave to report they have examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants payable out of the funds as follows. Highway Fund, $401,774.74. All other funds, $743,739.25, for a total for the month of June 2019, $1,145,513.99. The General Fund, $1,192,285.38. All other funds, $3,816,828.07, for a total for the month of June 2019 of $5,009,113.45.
Thank you. Motion to approve claims report. Mr. Lear, second. Mrs. Polk. Any questions? It'll be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess. Mr. Hess. Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under department reports. Why don't we do this? Get a motion to combine and accept the reports. Mr. Payton, second. Mrs. Parker. And if we can get those read, please. Thank you.
County Collector's Monthly Report for June 2019. Total cash in banks and investments, $104,378,192.14. County Treasurer's Monthly Report for June 2019. Total cash and investments, $104,378,192.14. The Finance Department, the Treasurer, total in accounting, checking accounts and cash, total $10,954,681.38. General Fund deficit balance of $1,255,577.04. Coroner's Monthly Report for June 2019. Total calls 105, coroner's cases 15, autopsies 5, toxicology 8, outside autopsies 2, x-rays 1, cremations 59, 3 incomplete. Coroner's income summary for June 2019. Total fees of $7,026.63. Circuit Clerk Cash Book for June 2019. Month-end dispersed, $343,482.42. Recorder's Monthly Report for June 2019. Total fees paid to the County Treasurer, $128,025.84. County Clerk's Monthly Report for June 2019. Total fees of $28,195.92. Animal Control Monthly Report for June 2019. Total fees of $20,245. The IPTIP Building Fund, $515.17. Total animals handled, 90. Monthly Division Report. Total permits issued, 89. Fees of $109,023. Total extra fees of $3,716 for a total of $112,739. The Monthly Division Report for June 2019, total permits of 105, total fees of $32,286. Monthly Resolution Report for August 2019, total to the county, $25,682.30. And the quarterly report for the Regional Superintendent of Schools for Iroquois and Kankakee County is on file.
Thanks, Dan. We have a motion and a second. That's a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under consent agenda, is there anything you would like to be removed from the consent agenda? Give you a moment. All right, second time. Anything to be removed? Then do I have a motion to combine and approve the consent agenda? Mr. Swanson, second. Mr. Eckhoff. If we could read these into the record, sir, please.
The appointment of Joe Deno to the Gar Creek Drainage District. The appointment of Devin Nugent to the Mantino 3 Drainage District. Resolution authorizing the disposal of a truck and boat by the Animal Control Department. The appointment of Andrew Wheeler to the Kankakee River Basin and Yellow River Basin Development Commission. ZBA case 1907, request for variances to section 121-286 access road and 121-99.e lot width in the A1 Agriculture District on a parcel generally situated in Section 33 of Rockville Township. The petitioners are David Africano, property owner, and Nicholas Africano, applicant. ZBA case 19-08, request for a rezoning from A1 Agriculture District to RE Rural Estate District on a parcel generally situated in Section 24 of Salina Township. The petitioners are Irma Jean Berghaus Estate, property owner, and Jill Berghaus Grant, applicant. Transportation grant between IDOT and Kankakee County fiscal year 2020.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and that will be a roll call vote, sir.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Mr. Legess, Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mrs. Polk,
Aye.
Mr. Snipes,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mrs. Weber,
Aye.
Mrs. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mrs. Parker,
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar,
Aye.
Mr. Ritter,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zakuo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling, Mr. Dunhill, Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. This next item, I am going to step out because this deals with rezoning for my employer. Even though I don't have a ownership stake in the company, it's probably best that I don't even handle this particular thing on the agenda. So unless somebody has a problem with that and wants to make the motion for me to stay and vote. Is there a second to the troublemaker? Mr. Payton is a second. So this is a vote to force the chairman to vote on this. I want a roll call vote. Hey, I'm serious.
Okay.
Roll call.
Mr. Washington,
Nay.
Mr. Legess,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Nay.
Mrs. Polk,
Nay.
Mr. Snipes,
Nay.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Mr. Seroy,
Nay.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mrs. Weber,
Aye.
Mrs. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mrs. Parker,
Nay.
Ms. Dunbar,
Aye.
Mr. Ritter,
Nay.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Nay.
Mr. Fairfield,
Nay.
Ms. Haas,
Nay.
Mr. Carrico,
Nay.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Nay.
Mr. Smith,
Nay.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill,
Nay.
Mr. Wheeler.
Nay.
Motion fails.
Motion fails. See you in a minute. Mr. Seroy will handle this.
Could I get you to read the ZBA case
Can do.
1904 into the record, please?
ZBA case, just the title.
Yes.
ZBA case 19-04, rezoning from R1 single family residential district and C2 general commercial district to A1 agriculture district in section 17 of Momence Township.
I have a motion by Mr. Hess and a second by Ms. Dunbar. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? You have comment, Mr. Snipes?
We're discussing the, this is Van Duen's. Only thing I need is a brief narrative. I see that no one came to the meeting, so there was really no opposition as to this particular proposal, if I'm correct.
That's why Delbert's here, so yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Kelly, can you switch over the? All right. Van Drunen Land Holdings LLC would like to expand their agricultural maintenance facility located on Vincennes Trail just outside of the city of Momence. Their current facility is on that red square that you see on the map up there that's surrounded by blue. They are combining that parcel with the parcel just north of it and some of the parcel of the agricultural parcel to create a 7.29 acre parcel to accommodate the expansion of their facility. They came to us wanting to put up a maintenance and equipment storage pole barn on the yellow area, and that's zoned R1 single family residence, and of course that's not allowed there. So the red is C2 general commercial, the yellow is R1 single family residence. They'd like it rezoned to A1 agriculture so that they can have their expansion. Both Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning and Zoning Committee both recommend the approval of this application.
Any other questions? This is here, we have to have a roll call vote. Roll call? Roll call
Okay.
vote?
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Mr. Legess,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mrs. Polk,
Aye.
Mr. Snipes,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mrs. Weber,
Aye.
Mrs. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mrs. Parker,
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar,
Aye.
Mr. Ritter,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, moving on to finance. If we could read the title into the record, please.
Sure. Authorizing the county board chairman to sign an intergovernmental agreement between the Illinois Department of Natural Resources and the county of Kankakee.
I start with a motion to approve on this one here. Mr. Payton, second. Mrs. Polk. If there's any explanation, I tell you what, Dell would probably be able to run through it real quick, just a brief explanation.
About a year ago, we had a visit from Illinois Department of Natural Resources in our office to discuss flooding and our flood management. And one thing that came out of that meeting was that Department of Natural Resources has a program that can give us money to buy out severe repetitive loss properties. So we took that to the Planning and Zoning Committee, and they agreed that we should apply for the funds, and we have received those funds. We're waiting on an agreement to be signed, and what we're asking today is permission for the county board chairman to sign that agreement. The agreement would allow us to buy out up to 5 houses on Laurel Lane in Aroma Township. They're outlined in red on the map up there. And demolish those houses. At the end of the program, the county would own those 5 properties. The maximum amount that would be allowable is about $500,000, even though we've estimated the actual buyout cost around $432. But the program amount will pay up to, I think it's $550 for the buyout. The process is that once the agreement is signed and ready to go, we contact all of the owners of those properties to see if they're still interested in participating. If they are, then we start the paperwork for the appraisals and getting vendors to demolish the structures. The price that we have there is an estimated price based on fair market value. The actual price that DNR will pay for the properties will be based on the actual appraisal pre-loss, so pre-damage. Those properties are severely damaged right now. Took this to finance last month, and they recommended the approval with 2 conditions. One, that we not spend more than $250,000 at a time before being reimbursed. Because this is a reimbursement, the county must spend the money first. And that we get a second appraisal on each property. I have talked to DNR about that. They will not pay for a second appraisal, so if we do want one, the county would have to pay for that appraisal themselves. But the process is that we do get the appraisal, we send it to DNR, and they have their appraisers review it. So there is a second review on those appraisals.
Any questions? Then there was wasn't there another stipulation on the total spend or?
$250,000 out at one time.
Out at one time.
Yes.
Okay.
Once we've been reimbursed, we can buy another one. So we may have to buy them in series.
We have a couple of years to do this from
2
the
years.
2 years.
Yes.
Is that for when the first appraisal's in, or was the clock ticking when they
From when
approved?
you sign the agreement.
When I signed the agreement?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Snipes?
I'm looking at the 4 properties. I see that they say the property 5 is no longer available. Is that because we can't attain it, or?
Yes, property 5, which is the one on the left, we left it in the program because changing the paper, we'd have to start from scratch again. That one was a foreclosure by Wells Fargo, and Wells Fargo came to us, said they would give us that property if we were ready to take it. But we were not ready to take it because we did not have the agreement in place. Because of that, they had to keep it on the market, and someone did buy it and is rehabbing it themselves.
Okay, and then I noticed the property number 4, from the market value, is asking, I guess, over $33,000 more for their particular property. So is that why, if we come up with a fair market, another market analysis that basically states that it's at 61, are we prepared to negotiate that price?
No.
We won't be negotiating? We'll just hold it at the 61?
Whatever the appraisal comes out at is what DNR will pay for it. So it's a voluntary program, so if the owner doesn't like the price or doesn't want to continue participating, they do not have to.
Okay, just one additional question. What if, say, for property parcel number 1, we were able to get it under the market value for like 50,000? Would that 18,000 be applicable to another property if we had to look at overpaying it, or were we just sticking with the FMV?
The fair market value was just for us to estimate what we may pay out on each property. The actual appraisal of the property will determine what's paid out.
Okay.
Mr. Featherly?
Mr. Skimmerhorn, what's the future for this property after the county purchases it?
It'll be owned by the county. The county will be responsible to maintain the property and insure the property. We have not had the discussions to determine exactly what will happen to it. I suspect something similar to the Dahl property that we just purchased, where we lease it for a very nominal fee to neighboring properties, owners in the neighborhood, for their use.
Okay, being it's adjoining you just took it off my screen here. Being it's adjoining a park, is that what kind of park is it? I wasn't able to read.
It's not much of a park.
Okay.
It's a park on the subdivision plat.
Okay.
For the enjoyment of the people who own property in that subdivision. Okay. But it's overgrown. I don't believe it's been used in years, if at all. It does have access to the river, and there's a few walking paths that have been worn through it, but that's about it.
So the county's responsible for mowing and the insurance
We
of the
could
property
be.
in case something happens
Yes.
to somebody on it or drowns in the river next to it, or is that how that works? So the county's gonna be responsible for the property legally and maintenance-wise?
The county would own it, yes, and they would have all the liabilities that come with ownership.
So we have to mow it, what, a couple times a year?
Or let it go to some type of natural prairie or plantings.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kinzinger?
If the total comes in way less than you proposed, is there other property available that could be part of that grant, or are we limited only to the properties that are outlined in red?
Only the 5 that are here now. We would have to apply again if we had additional properties.
Any other questions about this? Mr. Lear?
Mr. Chairman,
What's going to be the motion on the floor? I'm a little unclear in that.
The motion would be to authorize me to sign the to sign the agreement, basically.
So if I may, does that mean that the conditions the Finance Committee imposed would be enforced until the Finance Committee chose to take a different step, or?
Correct, right. And the one thing I was gonna ask on is the appraisal part of it, because we don't get reimbursed if we spend money on a second appraisal. I was gonna ask if that one, I understand wanting to do a couple at a time, to try to keep our risk down. It's the same program that Watsika's doing.
No, that's actually a FEMA
That's the federal
HGM
grant. Okay, I just want
grant.
to drive the correlation, but basically it would be, I think you'd said do them just a chunk at a time, and then as long as we get them done within the 2 years, we're okay with the grant.
That is correct. And our past experience with the Dahl property was about 40 days from the time we billed till we got the check for reimbursement. So.
Yes, sir.
I would like to make clear on the floor, I think the motion should be that the chairman sign that agreement, but that the second appraisal be waived in light of the fact that there's only these properties that are part of the grant to begin with. So I'd like to waive that portion as a motion amendment, I guess.
And keep
everything else
keep
in place.
the cap at
Yes.
250. What was that the number?
250.
250.
Yes.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor then.
I would like to propose that motion.
Okay,
yes.
there's the motion. Is there a second to that one? I need a second, and then we could have questions.
Second.
Yeah, second with Mr. Snipes, and then your question.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Delbert, this is all contingent that the people accept the fair market value minus any insurance money they've already pocketed.
The actual appraisal value.
The appraised value.
Pre-damaged, and subtracted off of that would be any, floodplain dollars that they've
So
received
$60,000
for damage.
house, if they've got $40,000, they've got to accept 20.
It could be very well that we're only paying for the ground.
Right.
So is there any other questions about the motion? Is everybody clear on the motion? First of all, if there's any questions, we can restate it, but. Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. We already have a second, do we not? Yes. All right, let's do, well, we're gonna spend to get reimbursed. We should do a roll call vote regardless.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Mr. Legess,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Clarification, Chairman.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Are we voting on the amended part of it or just the
Well,
whole
that was
thing?
what was carried with from finance, so we're just voting on the actual issue now.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk,
Aye.
Mr. Snipes,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mrs. Weber,
Aye.
Mrs. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mrs. Parker,
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar,
Aye.
Mr. Ritter,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Ms. Haas, Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff, Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Now I need a motion to go into executive session, discussion of pending litigation 5 ILCS 120/2C11. Is there a motion? Mr. Legess, second by Mr. Lear. That will be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Mr. Legess,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Ms. Polk,
Aye.
Mr. Snipes,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mrs. Weber,
Aye.
Mrs. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mrs. Parker,
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar,
Aye.
Mr. Ritter,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Donnell, Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Well, we're gonna take a short break and everything. Still here. All right, we are now back from executive session. All board members are still present. Under old business, I have lots of openings. I will explain. It's your fault. I will explain on the openings. What I did is I asked Kelly to put some asterisks next to the drainage districts, because it's drainage district season, if you will. If you see 2 asterisks, that means 2 people have reapplied that are current board members, because it's one of the jobs we have as a county board member, if you know somebody in that district, to try to find someone to fill these spots. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea, while we've already got applications in for these ones here. So from current board members. So just as a more of an informational, I thought it might be easier to figure out who to target. 1 opening on the BM Lewis Drainage District, 1 on the Mantino number 9 Drainage, 3 openings on Baker Creek, 1 opening on Canavan Drainage, 1 opening on Clawson Park Drainage, 1 opening on X-Line Creek Drainage, 1 opening on the Gar Creek Drainage District, 1 opening on Grinnell Special Drainage District, 1 opening on Joe Bennis Drainage, 1 opening on Little Beaver Special Drainage number 1, 1 opening on McGilvery Special Drainage, 1 on Minnie Creek Drainage, 1 on the Momenson Yellowhead Drainage number 1, 2 openings on Raymond Drainage District, 1 opening on Rockville Drainage number 1, 1 opening on Spring Creek Drainage, 1 opening on Yellowhead and Washington Union Drainage number 2, 1 resident opening on the Kankakee County Housing Authority Board, 1 opening on the Kankakee County Ethics Commission, 2 openings on the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission, 1 opening on the Kankakee County Historic Preservation Commission for an architect, 2 openings on the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee, those are county board members for 1-year term, and 3 openings on the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee for a 2-year term. So I just had a couple of things under new business for me, and then we'll go to everybody else. Reminder, we have a night meeting in November at the library, State of the County. I've asked a few of the committee chair people about this, but I'll just say it to everybody at once. We are looking to see if the committee chair people will do a 5-minute recap to the board and to the public about their committee for that year. It may be tough, so we're printing out the agendas and all the minutes for those committee folks, and if you need any help going through it, I'd be happy to help. But that, again, plenty of time. That's in November, so we'll just do a quick. If everybody had 10 minutes, obviously we'll be there for quite a while. So if we can kind of go between around 5 minutes, that's what we're looking to do, just the highlights, and then maybe some challenges for the next year. So I'll get that to the committee chair people as time permits over the next couple of weeks, and then also I have a DC trip to meet with all of our Congress people in September. So if board members have things that they want me to relay, things that we should focus on, please get those to me. I will take that down there. You know, there's obvious things that we've been asking for, some things that we have asked our lobbyists to help us with in Springfield that have come to fruition. There's a lot of good news along those lines, so it's nice to have that gentleman able to open a few doors in Springfield through friendships, because he's not a registered lobbyist there, obviously. He's just our guy for Springfield, but we need to meet with the people who are in control of the purse strings in DC, because we're asking for some substantial things out of DC, workforce development money, things like that, to help the people here who are underemployed or unemployed be able to get the skills necessary to fill those 3,000 to 4,000 open jobs we have in the area, especially in underprivileged areas. So please let me know if you have anything you want me to talk to our legislators about, and I'd be happy to bring that message down there. So any new business from the board? Mr. Snipes.
Just for information, I don't want to be divisive, but this probably is going to kind of hurt the hearts of the county board members that are on the Criminal Justice Committee. I will not be in attendance because I will be in Springfield that day. So just want to let the chairman of that committee know that I will not be there. I know the hearts are heavy, but it's something I must do.
Well, is there a motion to put the flags at half staff? No. Thank you for that, for the heads up. Any other new or old business in that? And by the way, the DC trip is no taxpayer money. That's not coming. There's no bills coming here. So nothing to be paid by the county. Anything, Mr. Lejess?
Yes, without Mr. Oltop here, I, without stress, make a motion. We adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second, Mr. Hess? There is a second for Mr. Hess. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, same sign. You're gonna give my